Hello there. Thank you to everyone who's messaged me about our last couple of episodes, the South Shields poltergeist. Utterly horrifying, right? We will be coming back to that and all of our other investigations this series in a special case update episode right at the end of the series. Keep the messages coming in, but right now, we've got a truly extraordinary story for you, a famous one, in fact, from the paranormal archives. We're going back to 1879. An American actor called Walter Hubbell has traveled to Nova Scotia in Canada. Hubbell is a fanatical skeptic. He has come all the way to the small town of Amherst to try and debunk a supposed poltergeist that has made headlines across North America. The haunting seems to revolve around a young woman called Esther Cox. She's been seemingly plagued by phantom noises, spontaneous fires, and injuries that she says were caused by something supernatural. Walter spends 6 weeks living with Esther and her family, but far from debunking the case. He leaves Amherst believing that Esther is indeed being tormented by a demon. Goodness me. What is going on in Amherst? Let us see. I'm Danny Robbins, and this is Uncanny Cold Cases. Secrets still remain. Thank you for joining me for another brand new episode of Uncanny Cold Cases, a vintage haunting this time that has obsessed paranormal experts. As ever, we want to know if the answers lie in genuine supernatural phenomena or in that most mysterious and murky of places, the human mind. Or could it possibly be both? Here to help me unpack it are our experts for Team Skeptic, forensic psychologist Dr. Ciarán O'Keefe, and for Team Believer, writer and parapsychologist Evelyn Hollow. Evelyn, many poltergeist cases feature a teenage girl at the heart of them. Esther Cox is 18 when things start here, but what makes this case different? What makes it stand out in the annals of paranormal history?
I think it's not just the level of phenomena that occurs, but the variety of it. There are some really, really bizarre stuff in this case that doesn't seem to happen in other poltergeist cases. There are also things that to us might now feel like tropes. So we go, okay, well, that happens in every poltergeist case. But you have to remember that this case is 150 years before any of this becomes a trope. And very uniquely, you have people coming in who are hardcore skeptics, who are actively looking to debunk the case, and they have their mind changed.
Does that sound familiar, Ciarán?
Yes, it does. That's my role.
It's interesting, isn't it? This case is really well known internationally, but it's huge in Canada. There's even a festival devoted to it every year in the town of Amherst where it happened. People get together and celebrate this frightening case.
Yeah, it's very, very bizarre that they have this annual celebration. And what's even more bizarre is part of that festival, they have a huge mural, but they also have a pie-eating contest.
Why? Why would you eat pies to commemorate a paranormal encounter?
Very strange. I would worry about the content of those pies and what association they have with the poltergeist case.
Is it a poltergeist?
Poltergeist. I knew you were going to say that. But you know, there's that humorous and celebratory aspect of this festival. But I think what we're seeing all of these years later is almost like a sense of solidarity with Esther. You know, people are sympathizing with what she went through. And that, I think, is also at the heart of this festival.
It really has captured so many people's imaginations. But be prepared. There is a sad, unsettling side to the story. Let us see if we can make sense of it. We need to wind back to about a year before Walter Hubbell arrives to begin his investigation. It's August 1878. Canada is in the middle of a massive expansion. Hundreds of thousands of European settlers have moved here to start a new life or escape their old one. Amherst is a quiet town, home to some 3,000 souls, 4 churches, a music hall, and a shoe factory. The focus of our story is Esther Cox. She has short, dark curls and grey eyes. She's only 18 years old, but she's already lived a hard life. Her mother died when she was just 3 weeks old, and she was handed over to her grandmother who brought her up. Esther has recently moved again, this time to her married sister, Olive's house, a cheerful, yellow-painted place called Teed Cottage. And for the first time, Esther feels like she might finally be able to settle into a normal family life. Esther puts her energy into helping Olive around the house and keeps busy looking after her baby nephew. But over the next couple of months, strange things start to happen around Esther. Objects move. Bangs are heard around the house. Things that are just hard to explain away. Then, One night, she wakes with a jolt. Her eyes are red-rimmed and bulging out of her head. Her temperature is sky-high, and strangest of all, she is swollen. She looks almost like she's been inflated. She stands stock still in the bedroom, hair on end like a halo. She's gripping the back of a chair so hard, her fingernails leave marks in the wood. "What is happening to me?" she cries. "I'm dying." They get her out of bed, and then from nowhere, 3 loud thunderclaps shake the room. Esther is immediately calm. Her fever is gone. Her eyes and body are back to normal. It's so weird. Esther's family call the local doctor, Edwin Carity, who comes to check her over. Dr. Carity goes into Esther's room and finds her unconscious now, but with her lips moving as if she's speaking. Then, in front of his eyes, the pillow under her head slides out as if being pulled by an invisible hand. One of the farm labourers from nearby, a big lad called John, tries to hold the pillow in place, but he can't. There's a tussle as he tries to wrestle it from a seemingly invisible force. Then, the pillow plumps itself up and slides back into place under Esther's head. Dr. Carity, confused, bemused, hears a series of bangs that seem to almost tease him, leading him to the door of the room. Behind him, the bedclothes fly off the bed and crumple in a heap on the floor. The doctor looks around the room, searching for the culprit. Esther, now wide awake, isn't looking at the bedclothes though. Her gaze is fixed over the doctor's shoulder, locked on the far wall. He turns. Moments ago, that wall was blank. Now, it is carved with furious scratches, spelling, "Esther Cox, you are mine to kill." Holy heavens. Evelyn, we will get on to that writing in just a moment, but first off, noises, objects moving. Esther was craving a normal, quiet life. She is not getting it.
No, absolutely not. So she's a young girl that lives in a small town in a relatively remote place. All she wants is a normal life. And now she's faced with this. And at this point in time, based on the type of phenomena and the pattern that it's happening in, it feels like it's going to be a poltergeist case. And we can already see that starting to manifest because now she's seriously physically ill to the point where she believes that she is dying.
Well, that's really interesting and seems to potentially deviate from some of the other poltergeist cases we've looked at where things are happening around you. This is very much happening to her. She's described as being swollen, Ciarán. It's almost like a moment from a Roald Dahl story. What is going on?
Well, I think we've got to remember she might actually be physically ill. We might have a lack of a diagnosis here, and it could be something like meteorism, this idea of kind of a condition that they talked about in the 1870s, which was where people became abdominally bloated, effectively, but it can happen very, very quickly.
But would a massive loud bang suddenly deflate a person in that situation?
Well, there are some conditions associated with bloating where that could be the case. I think the difficulty here with Esther is that she's also experiencing a high fever and delirium, which makes me think it could be typhoid fever. Now, typhoid fever wouldn't necessarily just immediately dissipate with a loud bang, so it's an interesting moment.
Evelyn, the writing is quite literally on the wall in this case. Esther Cox, you are mine to kill. It's such an eerie, unsettling thing to hear in any context, but written on the bedroom wall. It's extraordinary.
It does. It lacks ambiguity. I think often in poltergeist cases, you're looking to extrapolate meaning from a series of events. You're looking for something. Is it angry? Is it jealous? What does it want? Who is it? In this case, you have writing in English on a wall saying that someone is going to die.
We saw writing in the case we looked at just previous to this, the South Shields poltergeist. It's an extraordinary idea to get your head around, the idea that a ghost can write.
Mm-hmm. So in a poltergeist case in particular, it's rare, but it's not impossible. So we also saw it in the Battersea poltergeist, the first series we all worked on together. We've just had it in the South Shields case as well, and now we're seeing it here. And so how is that possible? Because in this case, it's described as being scratched into the wall. So therefore, something has to physically do that, either with another object, with a nail, with their own hand, which means if we can rule out that it's not a person, in which case Esther or the doctor are the only two people in the room. So if it's not either of them, then it has to be a force that does it. And that breaks the laws of physics. That shouldn't be possible. But nothing that we see in paranormal cases exactly behaves the way that we think it's going to behave. Particularly poltergeist cases repeatedly break classical Newtonian physics.
Ciarán, the idea of breaking the laws of physics, I mean, we've seen things that seem to do that in so many cases. In this particular instance, if that writing is faked, how?
Well, I think we've got to consider that there are suspects, even at this early stage. So we hear from the doctor, but we also hear Esther's account. So those are two suspects. Now, the only problem with it being the doctor is that we've got his testimony. He doesn't think it's being hoaxed. There doesn't seem to be any sort of motivation there. If we then look at Esther, according to what I'm thinking from a skeptical point of view, she might be suffering from delirium. And so who's to say that she hasn't caused the writing herself? She even says early on that she felt that she was dying.
But we can't have this both ways, can we? I mean, if she's ill in bed, incredibly ill, you know, we talked about that kind of swollen, bloated quality to her. She's not also then getting out of bed to go and carve into walls, is she?
Yeah, well, she is. I think we're being very dramatic in terms of, you know, her being unable to get out of bed. She's not bedridden. But also remember, the doctor walks into the room. He doesn't see the actual writing occur. It's only when Esther looks at the back wall that he then sees it. So there's time there before he goes into the room for Esther to have done it. Now, I'm not saying...
You feel like you would notice, if you walk into a room, you'd notice Esther Cox, You Are Mine to Kill, carved into the bedroom wall.
Well, no, why would you? The description of the room as I see it is the doctor walks in, and he walks in to the bed where Esther is lying, and the wall that we're talking about is behind him. So you wouldn't go into a room and look all around the walls. You would be focusing on the patient, and that's what the doctor does.
All right, it's a good point. However we explain this writing, do we feel that Esther is in danger?
Yeah, absolutely. Because if it's her and she's physically and or mentally ill, then this is only going to escalate. You know, we're going to see a realm of psychosis essentially. If it is a physical, real, human, living person doing it, then somebody means to do her harm or at least distress. And if it's not, and it is something paranormal, and it's a poltergeist case, then we know that potentially this could escalate right the way up to threat to life.
Thank you both. A lot to think about already. Hell of a lot more still to come. Let me know. How are you feeling? Team believer or team skeptic? That is what the comments are for. Give me your theories. See if you can crack this case. But don't decide just yet. Because back in Amherst, things are about to develop in a big way. Esther's story has become the talk of this small town. To be fair, it's hard for the locals to avoid it because this noisy ghost, if that's what it is genuinely very loud. The banging and rapping coming from the house can be heard 70 meters away. People say it sounds like someone is using a sledgehammer to break the shingles on the roof. Locals start to detour past the house, hoping to see something for themselves, and often they are not disappointed. The minister from the local Baptist church comes to check out the phenomena. He has a theory that somehow Esther has become charged with electricity, and this excess power is coming out of her and interacting with the physical world. Not wanting to be left out, another church minister comes along too, and he sees a bucket of cold water standing on the kitchen table become agitated and appear to boil whilst Esther is standing close. Hot on the tails of these local luminaries, local people start to gather outside in large crowds. They're so anxious to see the phenomena for themselves that the police have to be called out more than once to keep order. And then things get even more complicated. Esther is found again in that feverish, swollen state. They send for Dr. Carity. Esther seems to be almost in a trance this time. But she's speaking, describing something that happened last summer, something that she has hidden from her sisters so far. What she describes isn't supernatural. Something much more human and something much more disturbing. It seems that back in August, a local man called Bob McNeal took Esther out for a drive in his horse-drawn carriage. Bob worked at the shoe factory with Esther's brother-in-law and was interested in courting her. But on that day, he took her out of town to a quiet clearing, reached into his coat, pulled out a gun. Bob had a wild look, and Esther was sure that he was going to do something terrible. Suddenly, there was a noise behind them, another carriage coming past. That distraction might just have saved Esther's life. Olive is almost in tears hearing about this. I knew that man would cause you harm, she cries. I swear he is at the bottom of all of this. Why, I'd say it was him making all of these strange happenings around the house. And at that moment, 3 sharp raps ring out as if they're agreeing with her. Startled, Dr. Carity asks a question. Can you hear what we say? And again, 3 sharp raps are heard, as if to say yes. Dr. Carity is puzzled. He can't work out how a living man could be haunting a house. The phenomena continues. Esther starts to hear voices threatening to set fire to the house. Shaken and not wanting to be alone, she shares a bed that night with her sister Jenny. Jenny tries to reassure Esther, reminding her there's no such thing as ghosts. Then, as if in response, a single lit match falls from somewhere up in the rafters onto the bed between them. Jenny grabs it and puts it out. Phew, where did that come from? Over the next 10 minutes, though, 8 or 10 more lit matches fall from all around the room. Jenny is having a hard time keeping up with them. What she and Esther are witnessing feels utterly impossible. Then, Esther jumps to her feet and shouts in a hoarse voice, "Look, there, my God, it is the ghost. Don't you see him?" She says that the ghost is wearing grey, glaring at her, and most sinister of all, he has a terrifying threat. If Esther doesn't leave the house tonight, he will start a fire in the loft and burn everyone in the house to death. Ciarán, this is genuinely chilling in so many ways. What we're learning now is that Esther has clearly experienced some sort of traumatic incident at the hands of this man, Bob McNeal. This is an era, isn't it, when people didn't really talk about emotions, where they didn't acknowledge the impact of trauma. Looking at it as a modern-day psychologist, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head there with saying it was a time in history where people didn't really talk about those traumatic experiences. We're in the modern day age where if you have a traumatic experience, talking about it, even with, family members, let alone a therapist, can actually help with the healing in that trauma. Here we have no healing at all. That experience has been bottled up in Esther, and unfortunately what we're then dealing with is the potential of lashing out and kind of responding to that traumatic experience. And I have genuine concerns for Esther.
Undeniable real trauma going on, Evelyn, but does that explain what's been happening?
I don't think it explains all of it. I think it could definitely explain some of the physical aspects of the case, some of the medical aspects. But post-traumatic stress disorder doesn't cause almost a dozen lit matches to fall from the ceiling one after another. It doesn't cause physical objects to move around the room. I don't know any type of trauma that can cause bangs so loud that people are gathered out in the street,
What are we to make of this assertion from Esther's sister Olive that Bob McNeal is somehow responsible for the phenomena? This idea that a living human being could be creating paranormal activity.
So I think what's happened here is that they're looking for an explanation as to why it's Esther. Why her? Why isn't it happening to anyone else in the house? Why this one girl in this one little town? And the thing that's different about Esther is that she has had this traumatic experience. And so they're starting to lump the two together. Now, we do know that some people believe that poltergeist cases can be caused by a human rather than a spirit or a ghost. William Roll coined the term RSPK, which is recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. And this was the belief that a poltergeist case isn't an unseen force enacted upon you, it's actually the person themselves.
It's a really interesting idea, isn't it? That idea of somehow emotional turbulence within a person creating paranormal activity around them. Something that we've talked about in other cases before. Clearly, we have an incredibly emotionally turbulent person at the heart of this. She's had this horrible experience at the hands of Bob McNeal. But the idea that would create the scale of activity we're witnessing feels just fantastical, doesn't it?
It does feel fantastical, and it's genuinely difficult to explain as a skeptic. I think, there's points here where I agree with Evelyn. Some of this phenomena and some of the actual experiences that Esther is having herself can be explained away, even as a result of the trauma. The trauma might be a trigger for physical illness, which then we're seeing manifestations of. But I think when it's the scale of this phenomena and the loudness of it, I think it's a lot more difficult to explain. But also the number of witnesses that are involved. I think that's very difficult to explain too.
Interesting that the Victorian fascination with electricity, this kind of newly discovered thing at that time, is very much at the heart of the way people are assessing her.
Yeah, we look at electricity now and we take it for granted. Back then, it would have seemed almost magical. Even lit matches, lit matches only really became kind of, a common usage about 20, 30 years before then. So that in itself is also quite magical. So to have these things appearing out of nowhere is amazing.
I can't believe you used the word magical. I was about to use utterly, utterly terrifying. It's a moment unlike anything we've seen across this series, really. The idea of lit matches appearing in midair and falling to the ground. How on earth do we explain it?
So in poltergeist cases, there is a stage. It's an optional stage in that it doesn't occur in every single case. And it's apporting and disapporting. So apporting is the sudden appearance of an object, seemingly from thin air. Disapporting is the inverse, it disappears. I think of every poltergeist case we've ever looked at, this case has the highest number of apporting instances in it.
People seem to be seeing evidence here. They see lit matches falling from the sky. They've seen the writing on the wall. They feel that they are witnessing tangible things here.
Yes, they feel they are, and I grant you, we are getting witnessing of evidence. Is that evidence actually paranormal? Even with the lit matches, I still hesitate to know, is that actual, asportings, objects appearing from nowhere, or is it somebody that's potentially faking that phenomena? We know, and I did it as a child, although I don't want to confess this to my children, but that you could take a match on a matchbox and flick it and it would light in midair. So who's to say that we can't have that sort of thing happening?
Don't worry, your kids will never find out about this. There is no danger of children watching YouTube. All right, keep all of your thoughts coming in those comments down below. Let me know if you are Team Believer or Team Skeptic as we return to Amherst. It is January 1879, just 4 months since all this started. Esther is, as you can imagine, emotionally and physically drained. A sad truth hangs heavy in the house. Nobody feels safe around her anymore. Olive and her husband send Esther to stay with family friends who run a local bar and restaurant. John White and his wife and son. People are really interested in what's happening to Esther, and she becomes quite a big draw in the restaurant, in a horrible freak show kind of way. But the ghost is causing John White problems, even whilst it brings in new customers, because it seems to be lighting small fires around the house, and heavy footsteps can be heard stomping around above the dining room. It also appears to continually open and close the saloon door, until John White props it closed with an axe handle. The strongest man in the bar can't open the door now, but whatever this is won't be stopped by a piece of wood. It lifts the door clean off its hinges and hurls it across the room. Good God, thinks John White. He doesn't know whether to be embarrassed or glad that the whole debacle is witnessed by Nova Scotia's Inspector for Fisheries, who's come to see what Esther's ghost can do. The Whites try to watch Esther around the clock now, for her safety and everyone else's. But one day, they leave her in the dining room with John White's young son, little Fred, who passes the time by whittling a piece of wood with a knife. Then, horribly, an unseen force apparently twists the knife from little Fred's astonished hand and thrusts it twice into Esther's back, leaving it stuck there, the wound bleeding heavily. Little Fred is distraught, and John White admits defeat. He can't protect Esther or his own family, and in March, she has to pack her bags again. This time, she's headed for the town of Sackville, about 30 kilometers away, where it's been arranged that she will be examined by a group of scientists and curious scholars who invent a complicated way of speaking to the supposed entity by spelling out words letter by letter. By now, several distinct spirits are purportedly claiming to speak through the knocks and rappings on walls that seem to follow Esther around. But the strongest of these seems to be a spirit that Esther calls Bob McNeal. He drops an inordinate number of swear words and claims to be responsible for the fires that break out around Esther. He says that when he walked the earth, he was a shoemaker. They ask Bob if he is in heaven. He says no. Then, is he in hell? The answer comes as an earth-shatteringly loud series of knocks. Yes. Blimey. Evelyn, we looked at the Black Monk of Pontefract case earlier this series. We talked then about the idea of a paranormal entity somehow having a physical impact on a person. That was somebody being pulled up the stairs. This is Esther being stabbed in the back with a knife more than once. The word extreme doesn't do it justice.
No, I think this is the most severe incident of physical harm in any poltergeist case I have ever seen. And we're not just talking about a scratch or her suddenly having pain and turning around and there's a knife in her. The knife appears to fly across the room. She's stabbed, it's pulled back out of her and it flies back into her again. She's bleeding quite profusely. It's incredibly serious.
I can't think of anything else like it that we've looked at. And Ciarán, it's in her back. I would imagine it's quite hard to stab yourself in the back.
Yeah, it's very difficult to conceptualize how that would be possible. If I take this and think about trying to stab this in my back, it would be quite difficult. I mean, I can get round my back now and do it, but like Evelyn said, the witnesses are saying that it goes into her back as if flying across the room, goes out and then comes back in again. So it's very difficult to explain this particular moment. And I really struggle as a skeptic.
What are the possibilities? As a skeptic here, what are you looking at?
I'm looking at the possibility. So we know that little Fred, so John's son, was whittling with that particular knife. And so are we dealing with him throwing the knife and causing this particular stabbing? But it doesn't explain how it's able to then exit and go back in. So that's one possibility. But if we can discount that little Fred is responsible for it, the only other possibility is that it has been embellished over the years, that maybe it was a little scratch, or maybe there was a stabbing at the top, or maybe in the side, and it was self-inflicted, and then it's been embellished over the years. But even as I say that, I feel like I'm reaching for an explanation, just because I don't want to be put into that corner that you're going to put me in and say, Ciarán, is this paranormal? You know, it's very difficult to explain.
You know what I can see just behind you right now? A pretty large elephant in the room. Which is that if it's not one of those two possibilities, it could be paranormal.
I think we've got to be open-minded to the possibility. As much as I hate saying it, as a skeptic, it does mean that I'm open-minded. It doesn't mean I'm cynical. And here, looking at all of the natural explanations, I feel that we are dealing with a particular phenomena in this case that is very difficult to explain. And the only possible explanation might be that it's paranormal.
Oh my goodness. Ciarán, what? Did you actually just articulate those words?
I said might. I didn't say definitely paranormal.
Wow, this is revelatory. I feel like I'm involved in some kind of seismic interview of a politician here where I'm like, you know, tell me, Minister, could it be a ghost? Could it be a ghost?
It could be. It could be. I just don't know how to explain it. And, you know, at this point, I would be reaching out to the skeptical community to saying, if we discount it's little Fred, we discount that it's embellishment of the story, what other skeptical explanation is there? And please help me with this.
The skeptics, if you are out there, get in touch now. The future of the Uncanny franchise is at stake right now. If ghosts exist, Ciarán, what are you going to do?
Don't know. I'm out of a job.
Look, this is so interesting. I think, you know, the reason we're having this discussion is because the phenomena is so strange and so frightening. And one particularly chilling aspect of this is that moment where Esther is taken off to see these scientists in Sackville, and they get this answer, this seeming moment where they believe it's a demon talking to them through Esther, and they use this name, Bob McNeal. Now, we've got to look at this, Evelyn. Bob McNeal is similar to Bob McNeal, that man who tried to attack Esther. Lots of people have joined the dots here. Is it significant?
Yeah, it's significant in that I think it reflects the psychology of the situation. For her, she had this incredibly traumatic experience. She's now got these further, seemingly endless, potentially paranormal traumatic experiences. And so am I surprised that the name of the living person is being assigned to something paranormal? No. So either she is giving it that name, or someone else is sort of feeding her or leading her on that it's her name, or it is genuinely some sort of person or demon that is possessed her.
Ciarán, he plays such a big role in this case, always lurking in the shadows behind all of this. Bob McNeal, the man who traumatized Esther and is still being referenced now in different ways. What do we know about the real life Bob?
Well, I think what's interesting about this particular character, Bob, is that he has the hallmarks of what forensic psychologists talk about as a potential high-risk likelihood of becoming a serial killer. We know for a fact there was animal cruelty early on in his childhood, but also spontaneous fires, potentially. So we've got the hallmarks.
Interesting detail, the spontaneous fires, given the stuff we've heard about already.
Exactly. That is really interesting. And it's also interesting as well that we get that association with the name. Nickel. But also, interestingly, later on, Esther talks about another spirit, Eliza McNeal. Exactly the same surname. And for me, that's not surprising as a psychologist. Effectively, what we've got is her kind of giving blame to all of this phenomena that she's experiencing to that original individual that's responsible for the trauma that I feel triggered all of this stuff.
Thanks both. Uncanny community, what do you make of this? It is a case with such high stakes, isn't it? It feels like Esther's very life is at threat here. So what is going on? Let me know in those comments down below, but we are not done yet. By this point, the story is all over the Canadian press. This is the height of the spiritualist boom, and the Esther Cox affair sparks story after story, keeping readers hooked for almost a year. And that is how Walter Hubbell hears about it. Hubbell is a jobbing actor with a deep loathing for mediums, ever since a close acquaintance of his fell prey to a fraudulent psychic some years earlier. He reads about all the phenomena surrounding Esther, and he's sure that he can debunk the whole thing. He visits her in Amherst, where she's back living at Teed Cottage with her sister Olive and family. They are now, sadly, the only people prepared to live with her. Hubbell has only been seated for about 5 minutes in their home when his own umbrella sails over his head as if thrown by a force he can't see. It flies 5 meters. Esther walks into the room at the same time and a carving knife whizzes through the air from somewhere behind her and lands on the floor between them. Hubbell searches the room behind Esther. There's no one there. Hubbell also sees lit matches fall from the ceiling. He seems to find this delightful, repeatedly saying, "Bob, I would like a match," and being answered with a flurry of tiny flames falling from the ceiling. Hubbell is instantly converted from skeptic to true believer. He stays with the family at Teed Cottage, finding out more, interviewing them and their neighbours about everything that has happened. He ends up writing a book called The Great Amherst Mystery, which is an instant bestseller. He even takes Esther with him on a speaking tour. But whilst Walter Hubbell gets rich off Esther's story, things don't go so well for Esther herself. She starts a new job with a farmer, maybe hoping that a change of scenery will give her a fresh start. But the phenomena follows her there. The farmer sees knives fly at Esther, but he's not worried about ghosts. He is a modern man, and he has another scientific theory, that Esther is somehow magnetic. This theory lasts until his barn burns to the ground, at which point he decides that Esther is an arsonist. She's convicted and sentenced to 4 months in prison. It feels horrendously cruel after all that she has endured. Or has Esther been behind this all along? It's so hard to say, but there is one last bit of mystery here. Esther only serves a month of her sentence. Some modern experts say that this is because there was a huge outburst of public sympathy for her, which helped secure her early release. But that's not what newspaper articles at the time claimed. They say that the phenomena followed Esther to prison, and that the guards couldn't keep her safe from the banging, injuries, and small fires, even if she was locked, empty-handed, in a small, unfurnished cell. Whatever it was, found her and tormented her. Poor Esther. Evelyn, do we know what happens to Esther after this?
We do. So we know that when she was taken out on tour with Hubbell, she was essentially sort of thrust onto the stage, bruised and cut, and just stood there absolutely petrified. I guess she probably felt like an animal in a zoo. Also critical to mention that she never made a single penny from this. Hubbell's book became a bestseller. He made a good chunk off of it. She never saw a single penny. Later in life, we have looked this up, and she subsequently married twice. She had a son by each of her husbands. Both husbands died, so she became a double widow. And then after that, she lived in poverty for the rest of her life. She worked in a laundry, and she died at just age 52.
Horribly sad story, Ciarán, also horribly familiar. There's so many of these cases where they have a young woman at the heart of it. It's damaging to go through something like this. It's life-changing.
It is. And when we look at this case, there are two things. Number one, you can deflect the criticism that it's been done for attention and for money, because with Esther, she certainly didn't gain from it. But also she suffered trauma, not only in experiencing the paranormal phenomena, but also the after effects of it. And I think we've got to remember that.
All right, great to hear your thoughts, both of you. Uncanny community, where are your thoughts at right now? What do we make of Walter Hubbell? Skeptic, converted to believer, or an exploitative opportunist? And was Esther troubled by literal demons or metaphorical ones? As we explore the impact of trauma, the psychological implications of this story, can it ever truly explain the phenomena that we have witnessed? Objects flying across rooms, lit matches materializing in midair, knives driving themselves into a young girl's back. Get in touch in the comments below or email uncanny@bbc.co.uk, and please, why not like, hype and subscribe this video whilst you're here. Show us some supernatural love. Next time, we've got a case which I know is so many people's favourite paranormal story of all time. We have been deluged by messages and emails, haven't we, asking us to look at it. If one of those came from you, the wait is over. Because next time on Uncanny Cold Cases, we are going to the place known for decades as the most haunted house in England. One of the most controversial hauntings of all time, Borley Rectory. Until then, sleep well. Don't have nightmares.
Secret still.